Welcome to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zoracle Profiles. I'm here with my co-host, community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Tracy Kawa. Tracy, we have a very interesting guest today. Cindy Krampetz. Cindy is the owner of Floor Coverings International franchise and a dedicated mother of two children. Her resume boasts a 20-year career in real estate before she decided to become a business owner. Now open for just 3 months, she's already earned the title of highest venue yielding franchisee in the system in the first 90 days, all while balancing the demands of motherhood, of course. Cindy earned her bachelor's degree from the University of Tennessee and is known for her dedication to customer service and growing her business. In her free time, Cindy enjoys hiking Kennesaw Mountain, supporting her kids' sports, and traveling with family and friends. Cindy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
We're
Nice.
excited to have you.
Oh, yeah. So did I understand that Rebecca was just saying that you're fairly new to
I am.
franchise?
Yeah.
Can you tell us how you got into franchise after 20 years in real estate?
Yeah, I had so much experience building sales teams, serving my company as a sales leader and multiple high demanding executive positions. So after the last 8 years, I spent a lot of time growing and scaling the company I was working for. We were able to sell it to private equity for 125 million, and we were
Wow.
just very excited about that accomplishment. So when things kind of slowed down in the real estate market, about 2022, I started thinking about, opening a company of my own, being able to serve my local community, building something, scaling it, leading a sales team, all the things that I'd had a lot of experience doing. And I decided it was time.
So would you say that this entrepreneurial spirit is something you've always had? I mean, it just seems like a big shift. Were you raised by entrepreneurs? Did you have a lot of experience around entrepreneurs? Tell us a little bit about that.
I was raised by sales leaders. My dad was the VP of sales for a torque tool company. My mom was in medical device sales. So it's just always been around me. And they were very successful. I don't know that I'd say I was always entrepreneurial minded. I don't think I really thought that big when I first started my career. I think with a lot of accomplishments and a lot of learnings and growth and development over the years, I became more and more confident and warmed up to the idea, so much so that it became something that was like, why wouldn't I do this? What's holding me back?
Right, like the next natural step for you.
Right, exactly.
So how old are your kids?
My son is 14 and my daughter is 12.
Ah, so you have a teen and a preteen.
Yes, they are my world.
So I have a question for you. How were you able to, what was it, be the number one in sales for, a certain designated period, being so new to franchise and being a mom of teenagers?
I think, a lot of it had to do with my background in real estate, especially. I have a huge network of realtors that are supporting this flooring, company getting up and running. A lot of sales experience. So I didn't have quite the learning curve I think that some people do when trying to start their own company. I essentially had built one before. I have hired thousands of sales reps over the last 20 years. It's got to be 2,000 or 3,000. And so finding the right talent and building the right team comes very naturally to me. So I wouldn't say I actually did it. I would say my team are 100% the reason why we got off to such a quick, start. And I'm very thankful for them. And I just couldn't do it without them.
Yeah, for sure. You know, it's so interesting because my perception of salespeople is they're like the wild, wild west.
Absolutely.
And how do you manage those types of individuals that are ready to take over the world? You just point them in the right direction, or how do you do that?
That's the goal, find out what motivates them, find out what their big goals are, and then just pave the way, show them the path to reach their goals and keep them excited about what we're doing. Culture is a big deal. Your team has to know that you love and adore them and care about them and want them to be successful. And when they feel that, they'll stay very, very connected to the mission. And they have to know where you're going, right? So my team knows what we're trying to accomplish. We set milestones, we celebrate the wins along the way. We have a lot of fun together. It's not all work. So, and salespeople like to have fun.
Yep, they do. They're very people oriented, and they love to celebrate, be recognized, and have fun. So weeding that into your culture seems like what's motivating them and making them feel like they're a valuable part of what you're creating.
Absolutely.
It's really cool also to see you smiling when you're talking about your sales team, because what that tells me is that you really, really enjoy that training aspect of your job.
Absolutely. I do love that part. It's fun when your team puts something, in play and it works and they're so excited. And they're just thirsty for more. And so we like to practice and coach and really focus on what went well in that last sale so that you can repeat that behavior, what didn't, what we maybe need to try differently. But I make it a really safe space to make mistakes, to fail, and we just learn from them and move forward. And so I'm really proud of them. That's probably where my smile is coming from. I have a very coachable team that has, high ambitions. And so I feel very lucky to be in business with them every single day.
Nice.
So it's interesting as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about the reviewing the success or why something didn't work and dissecting it to some degree and then fine tuning it the next time. So there's the coaching aspect of it. So we celebrate the success, but there's also that coaching of how to do it better and better each time. I'm thinking about my own business if I do that, Cindy. So I'm guessing that you do the same with your kids. Do you find that you parent like you run a business, meaning coaching?
I do.
At?
I do. I think being a mom and being a leader is exactly the same thing. You're basically trying to coach and guide and develop and help them become the best versions of themselves so that they can live a big life, have a big future, whether that be in their career or their personal lives. So I would say it's very similar. I listen, to what's on their mind. I help them problem solve. I ask a lot of questions. Sometimes giving people the answer doesn't always help them learn and grow. But if you ask questions and lead them to the answer, there's a sense of ownership and pride that comes with that. And they tend to, realize their dreams. But for me, that's what it's all about. Like, where are we today? Where are we going? How do we get there? And how can I help?
Wow. I love that. Asking the questions, like leading them, you're saying, to get to the point, to make the realization without you having to necessarily shut it down their throats, right? Letting them come to their own conclusion.
Yeah. You can see people just clam up when you're like, you should, whatever, fill in the blank. You should this, you should that, you should this. It's not a very effective way to coach or help someone with whatever they're trying to accomplish. So have you ever thought about, or what do you think about this? Or what comes to mind when? That kind of stuff seems to go a lot further. Or even, what do you think the solution should be? What do you think you should do in this situation? And when they come up with the right answer, just high-fiving, empowering them, telling them they're on the right track, and I'm so proud of them. That's kind of my approach, and it's really not different at work than it is at home.
I like that you made those correlations. And this correlation between asking versus telling, which tells a lot about your character and your personality and why you've been so successful, both as a mama as well as a coach of sales teams. Because I don't think any of us want to be told what to do, especially by the time we're teenagers, right? We want to be thought of that we have a brain and we can figure things out.
Yep, it's the fastest way for someone to go in the opposite direction or roll their eyes at you or whatever it may be. But it's also, it's similar, my approach, even with holding your employees accountable, right? I think people get offended when you don't notice that they're failing. I think it's like, does she care? Is she going to help me? No one likes to fail. And I think it's the same thing with my kids. It's how discipline comes into play whenever, maybe they're not making the right choices. If I just let it slide, it's telling them that I don't care or it's fine, whatever. And I just don't believe in that.
Tracy, I gotta make accolades here to you because I've seen you with your boys like this.
Oh, me?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. I don't feel like a successful mom every day, but I've got my moments, but thank you.
Where you ask questions and you ask, and you're pretty clear on where we're going and giving feedback. You're always giving feedback. And I hadn't thought of it, Cindy, the way you described it, that if I'm struggling, if I'm failing, if I'm not figuring something out, and someone that's supposed to be coaching me and wants me to succeed isn't stepping up and giving me feedback, you do feel a little abandoned, right? You do feel like she doesn't care or they don't care, but I hadn't heard it ever articulated that way, that we actually let them down when we don't give them feedback.
I agree that made me pause as well. And I actually wrote it down because I never heard
notes, girl. We're taking notes, Cindy.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's very empowering. When we think of empowering someone, we kind of think about it from the positive perspective, like, Ed, you can do it, come on. But that's almost coming from the opposite approach, right? Where, even if you let somebody fail and then you notice, or because with my boys, like I can't always tell them, like you said, what to do. Sometimes they do have to make their own mistakes after I've tried to guide them a certain way. But I like the way you were reframing that as, at least step back in and say, okay, now that things went sideways, how could you have done that better? What did you notice?
Right.
That's so interesting.
So, Cindy, a lot of the women that listen to this show are mothers. Can you talk a little bit about how you've been able to, I guess, juggle it would be, you're growing this business, you got this sales team. How are you able to do this with your teenagers or pre-teenagers?
Well, the first thing I'll say, I know how very fortunate I am, and not everybody's in this situation, but I have a huge support system. Everybody in my family lives locally. Both sets of grandparents, all the aunts and uncles. So at first, when they were little, I had a lot of help. And I would say they're the reason why my kids are just so happy, thriving in school, doing well with their sports. They have wonderful friends. Like my biggest fear was they were going to not have great friends and it was going to lead them down the wrong path. But no, they do. They have great friends. And so I'm very fortunate for that. That was in the early years. What I learned with time, especially when, they're in elementary school or they're not needing so much after, work, childcare and stuff like that, was I had to get really clear on my priorities. I had to decide what are my non-negotiables. And so setting aside time for them, I did it no different than if I were scheduled to be on this podcast or in a meeting or in a training somewhere. I had scheduled time that was dedicated to my family, and it was sacred. And I just always remind myself that when you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And so what would you be saying yes to that's more important than that sacred time that you've already identified as a top priority? And so that would be kind of the number one thing that I think about these days. And when there's misalignment with my values, my goals, and my priorities, I can feel it. I'm stressed or something seems off, and I have to slow down and think about that and honor, what's important to me. And so I would recommend to anyone that's in the situation, try it and see what doesn't break when you're spending time with your family, and make sure you have a healthy balance. Give what the, job requires, but don't neglect your family at the same time.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, and maybe that was part of it, what you just said, but what advice you would give to somebody who maybe doesn't have that support system that you had? What if there's a mom that is interested in, a franchise or going back to work and, doesn't really have that support system?
I would say believe in yourself and get creative. And it sounds like I'm being very, very direct, but find a way. There are groups, there are neighbors, there's so many people in your community that you could connect with, that you could build relationships with and trust and help in the situations wherever you need help. But I think it really does come down to deciding that I can figure this out. There's no problem too big for me to solve. And so committing to that, making up your mind, and not letting how hard it seems be an excuse. I think you'll surprise yourself. I really think we're capable of doing way more than sometimes we give ourselves credit.
It's that mindset thing, right?
Mindset, yeah.
It's so funny you say this, Cindy. The other day I was in a shop checking out. A young man was checking me out, and he was just so friendly and carrying on this conversation and wondered why I was buying all of this stuff, which was for business. And I'm explaining it to him, and he went into, I would be afraid to do that. Aren't you afraid to do that? Aren't you afraid to do that? There's no way I could do that. And everything that came out of his mouth, and I'm like, you're creating your own reality. He said, I would love to do it, but I can't, because of this, because of this, and because of this. And so that's kind of what you're addressing here is, yes, business is hard. Juggling.
It's hard. Yeah, but I really believe if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. I mean, it really comes down to, what you put your mind to.
So I'm going to change directions for just a second. Tracy, you had something you wanted to expound on there. You're good. If you look at your life, Cindy, and you would say there's this theme that seems to run through your life, or a motto that you live by, or a book, something that you live your life by, or that you can see happens again and again, what would that be?
So, I wouldn't say that any one thing happened. I had a very fortunate upbringing where both my parents were very successful, and I'm really, really grateful for the life they provided me. Coming out of college and getting into the workforce, I was like, there's no way I'm not at least doing what they did and be able to provide the same lifestyle to my children. So that was pretty defining. But along the way, I think what was always in the back of my mind was Wayne Gretzky's quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. That is, when opportunity comes your way, just say yes. You don't have to know all the answers. You don't have to have a plan or, a playbook necessarily. Just say yes and see where it will take you. I would say that's a big theme. And then I've had some very influential leaders who turned me on to reading. Now, I wouldn't say reading. I could not tell you the last time I held a book in my hand, But Audible is my best friend. And there's a long list of personal development, books that I've read over the years, and they have helped me with everything from my health to my relationships, to my, parenting, and to my career. So much so, I was recently hanging out with a friend and we were comparing our book lists. She liked all the fiction and the, very
Yeah.
fun books, a little bit smutty, if I'm allowed to say that on here. It was hilarious, her book list next to mine. And she was like, what in the world? You actually like this stuff? But it's all to help me just be a better version of myself. I fill my head with stuff that's positive, that's productive, that's going to help me do something maybe I don't know how to do today instead of other stuff. So I might need to take it back a notch and have some fun too. But that has kind of been my MO for the last 10, 15 years.
That's wonderful. Really great. So I guess on another note, have you ever had a challenge or something that, maybe it was an obstacle, maybe it was a situation that made you just kind of stop and go, and maybe redefine a way that you thought of things, or maybe a moment that helped you grow?
Yeah, I would say a long time ago, I was up for a VP of sales role at the company I was working for. I was the person on the team. I'd been a sales manager for 6 years. It seemed like it was my time and it was the right next step. And how could they not pick me, right? It was just like, I've been working so hard. I've been doing such a good job. Like, this is mine. Well, no, it wasn't. The president at the time brought in a candidate from another division that was also working hard and very talented. And it was his time. And so he got the role. And at the time, it was pretty devastating for me, but I had to use it as fuel. Okay, well, when the next time comes around, I can't be passed up that time. And it wasn't long after that until I was in a VP of sales role for a luxury builder that built all over the Southeast. It was a great opportunity, but I think in that moment, I learned that when you're told no, you have to persevere and figure things out. You can't let it derail you and, knock you off course or, overwhelm you, I guess, if you will, with, I don't know, sadness or rejection and that kind of stuff. So I know, but I didn't know that, all this time later, I'd be so thankful for that opportunity, but it did force me to kind of sharpen my, pencil and really get after it. So
what's fascinating to me is how you so easily acknowledged your competition, that he too was hardworking, talented, capable. So there wasn't this jealousy or I'm better than him. You acknowledge this was a worthy competitor, right? And which then just had you go, okay, how can I get even better for the next opportunity? So again, that goes back to that mindset component, because it's easy to get envious, jealous, mad, hurt, disappointed, angry. It's easy to go into that. I mean, did you at least go into it for a millisecond? I mean, just a millisecond. Did you go?
Just whisper.
Please tell me you're human, right?
Tears. There were tears, but there was a definite moment where it was okay, stop crying. It's time to move on. Let's learn from this guy. Let's figure this out. This isn't the end of the world. And I was young. I was really young. I think at that time I might have been 30 years old. So I was like, this isn't the end of the world.
So do you think it made you work smarter or harder?
Probably both. I don't even think you can do both, but actually harder was probably my MO at the time. I hadn't quite learned how to work smarter than harder. So
Yeah.
I've had some executive leadership coaching. They're like, you're like an auger. When you get stressed out, you just start drilling. And it's like, slow down, rest, and really think about what you need to do and make sure all of your efforts are high impact efforts. You know, I was doing everything thinking I could at the time. And so I had to learn how to work smarter, not as hard. I can't be all things to everyone at all times. And I was certainly trying.
Well, did you have children at this time too?
Yeah, I think, well, so my kids were born in 2010 and 12, and I moved into leadership in 2010. It was 6 weeks after my son was born.
Oh my goodness.
And then in 2014, I became VP of sales. So my daughter was 2. So they were little, 4 and 2, when I probably took on one of the more demanding roles I had up until that point. And then when I switched from new construction over to residential real estate, they weren't much older than that. That was in 2016. So yeah, they've always been, little and a big responsibility at the same time.
I'm sorry, Rebecca.
Go ahead, Tracy. I'm sorry.
Something you said just really hit me, where you said you can't be all things to all people. And even at this stage of the game with kids that are like 15 and 22, like I still feel guilt sometimes when they want my attention, but there are things I have to do. And you know what? It may not even be like my job, my work, my business. It may be housework. It may be a friend that needs me, but I still get that feeling of guilt. Like I want to be all things to all people. How do you deal with that?
I mean, I think you can't be, no one's perfect, and you kind of just have to accept it. I've accepted the fact that the guilt might never go away. Like there will always be those moments. I try to maybe make up for anytime I feel like I've let them down with something else, or if I know I'm about to let them down with something, I might try to negotiate ahead, like get ahead of it and let them know.
If in front of the 8 ball.
Yeah. Or I'll even sometimes just involve them in my work. So my son right now is very excited about getting paid to put out door knockers in our community. My daughter loves sorting flyers that we can put out in direct mail with me, or we'll run by the office. She helped me put together furniture for the new office. He helps me put out signs from time to time. So I just involve them so that in those moments of guilt or moments of maybe we call it letdown, I don't know, they actually are very connected to the cause and understand what it is I'm trying to accomplish with the business. So
wow, what a great teaching moment. Meaning they get to participate, they get to be part of the success and learn some business skills at the same time. And they're getting to know you in a different way, not just mom, right? And vice versa. You're seeing them as colleagues and participants in the building of something. So it's a whole nother level of a relationship. I hadn't thought about that. I love it. So let me ask you a question. When you go out in the future, who are you? What are people going to be saying about, oh, I remember Cindy when, or look how far she has come. What is the future like for Cindy?
I see my future. My dream has always been, maybe you would call it my big why, is to have my toes in the sand 6 months out of the year by the time I'm 55. That is what I'm working towards. And so to get there, I see myself being a highly accomplished business owner with very, very strong customer satisfaction scores, most of the business coming from repeat business or referrals. I see myself being one of the leaders at the franchise, maybe acquiring multiple more territories. I really see growing this business and maybe like I did it the first 90 days, maybe breaking some records on how big I can make this within the next 5 years, 10 years, maybe. But that's what I see. I say people saying, wow, she really built something incredible and special. And everyone in the community knows her and wants to do business with her, trusts her. That's a big deal. And so it's all about success. And then I see on the other side, my children really thriving, their careers at that point, taking off and being there for them too, as they're going through that learning curve and stubbing their toes like I did in the early years. I see myself being able to be there for them.
It's fascinating to hear you say all that, because in putting together sales teams, I'm sure you always had to set the vision of the future, provide the long and short-term goals. And it sounds like you've got all that lined up for yourself as well.
Yeah. I was in the discovery phase of deciding which franchise I was going to purchase. And I was already putting together my next 3-year pro forma before I had even purchased the company. And I was asking those at the franchise, will you look at this with me and tell me if this is doable or not? Like, am I on track, off track? But yeah, you have to decide where you're going and you have to think big. And when you think big, you'd be surprised at yourself at the decisions you'll make along the way, because your goal is so much bigger than maybe you think is possible at the time. So, and that's just always been my approach.
Can you address, because underneath this, I hear a thread around relationships, because you aren't doing this alone. You have built a team, whether it was a team to help you raise these beautiful children, a team, in the corporate environment in terms of your sales team, and even now. So talk to us about your philosophies around relationship and how you build those and build that loyalty and commitment and passion. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think when you treat others well, things just tend to work out. Do the right thing, be a kind person, be helpful to anyone that's in need. Go the extra mile. I think those are the things. Probably going the extra mile is where I win most people over. I don't always make the best first impression. And so it takes people some time to warm up to me. And I think I do win people over with my work ethic in my career. But, at home, it's basically just being there in times of need and making sure everybody knows that they're important.
I love your philosophies. Really, you're very inspiring.
Oh, well, thank you.
You really are. Well, you caught me off guard though when you said, I don't always make the great first impression. What do you think what is the first impression? Let me tell you what mine is. Can I tell you what mine is?
Sure.
This girl is so young. I'm like, she can't have teenagers. And because you look so youthful and vibrant, I'm like, this is just the whim. She's just thinking. And then the more I listen to you, I'm like, this is a businesswoman. This is someone that's going to accomplish whatever she said. But the baby face fooled me. It fooled me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's a very nice compliment. I think over what it is I'm not a very sociable person. I'm a huge introvert.
Oh.
So when meeting people for the first time, I'm actually not your typical salesperson that's, gift. I don't have the gift of gab. I'm not the center of attention. I'm actually not even that funny. So, humor makes connections from time to time. I'm just, I'm very transactional minded, impatient person and perfectionistic. So at first I think people are like, who is she? But then people tend to tell me, I would never have known you're an introvert. That gets told to me quite a bit, or wow, you make really good decisions. Things tend to work out. And so, but no, people don't think that at first. When I started with my first company, there were 27 of us that started on the same day. And my mentor told the ones that did all the hiring that I wasn't going to make it.
Oh, wow.
After meeting me. And I was like, I'll prove
No. I got that wrong.
I was like, watch me.
Watch me, I want to prove you wrong. We're with Zoracle Profiles, and one of the things, to your point, is folks that are slightly introverted actually make better salespeople, especially if it's a high ticket sale, because you appear more authentic, more genuine than someone who's too extroverted, because then it feels like a lot of fluff and sales rather than I really care about. So it's a falsehood that's out there that you have to be extroverted to be a great salesperson. This is not so. Especially when you're dealing with high trust, high credibility, knowledgeable types of sales where you're advising. The introvert tends to do better.
I think it comes down to listening. I'm a big fan of all those assessments. I've done so many and I've learned so much. I actually use it in my hiring process when hiring sales professionals, but it's the listening and realizing that you're there to solve a problem. And if you do that, you deserve to ask for the business and not be thinking about how do I make this person my friend the whole time and not being fearful to ask for the sale because you think you're being pushy, or you just got to know you're the right choice and you have a service that can solve a problem. You listen to what they need to accomplish, you show them what you can do to help them do that, and it all works out. But
Problem solver.
problem solver, yes.
Solver. Yeah, I was going to ask you if you were a good listener, like if you were a good observer. I'm sure, because I could picture, that I think a lot of times people who are more promotory are very friendly and outgoing, but they're not always listening. They're not always connecting on a deeper level.
Yeah, I would say I listen, and I would say I have a memory that is a blessing and a curse. My weakness is really showing appreciation. Like I have to work hard at that. I'm very transactional. I'm very results oriented. So sometimes I'm moving so fast, I'm just on to the next thing. I have to remember to slow down and make sure those around me know that I am proud. I do appreciate, and that, I have to give those high fives. I don't always, it doesn't come naturally to me. I have to work hard at it.
Wow.
Rebecca, I'm dying to see her profile.
I know, me too.
Oracle profile.
But you're so, Cindy, you're so self-reflective. You know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, you play to them, you hire to the areas where maybe you're not as strong, right? And there's a lot to be said about successful people. That's a key element. They need to know who they are, including the good, bad, and
Right.
Right. That's amazing. All right. I have a final question for you, and this is going to be crazy and off the wall.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
Hang in there, girl. What is your biggest pet peeve? What just drives you nuts?
Laziness.
That's good.
I just don't understand it. I have a hard time with it. I don't like laziness, and I don't like excuses.
Which frequently go together.
Right? Because usually someone that's lazy is the one that's, always complaining and bringing excuses. I don't know. Yeah, that drives me crazy.
We're seeing an epidemic of that, by the way. We're seeing an epidemic of lack of initiative, lack of commitment, lack of work ethic. And it's a concern in the future. that we need to turn that around where people have a desire to achieve, a desire to win, a desire to compete, a desire to succeed, right? And they're willing to put in
and
the effort.
you hear a lot, right? I want, and so especially with my kiddos, when they say that, I'm like, okay, how are you going to make that happen? It is my go-to, like, you can accomplish, you can get anything, but you have to work hard. And so I'm hoping they, latch on to that in life and figure it out. But
They will. They got a good example, right? A good model.
So tell us, Cindy, if people would like to get in touch with you, how to reach you.
oh yeah, I mean, I'm very accessible. You can go to my website, Floor Coverings International of Lost Mountain. You'll have access to my direct phone line, email, everything there. I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody that would want to talk.
Was that Lost Mountain? How do you spell that?
LOST.
Lost Mountain.
Lost Mountain. Yes. Floor Coverings International. And you can follow me on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn. I'm pretty much everywhere.
That's fabulous. Well, we wish you incredible ongoing success. I think you are definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with and a good model for others, men and women, who are considering being franchisees with Floor Coverings International. You really struck a chord with me in several places, especially how you manage your sales team and how really that's similar to how you're mothering also. And made me kind of reflect on myself in areas that I am weak in. So thank you for being so transparent. I really appreciate it, Cindy.
Well, thank you. That's very nice of you to say.
And Tracy, I'm going to punt it over to you for any final words.
Yeah, I'm going to catch that ball and run with it because, Cindy, I have to tell you that like the words that come to mind for me with you are gratitude, authentic, and positive. I just find that you're really filled with gratitude. And for somebody who's an introvert, you're extremely personable.
Thank you.
I think those two are two separate things, right?
Yeah.
Like you can be a personable introvert because once somebody connects with you, they connect with you. My biggest takeaway was absolutely what you said about noticing when people are falling or failing. That is tremendous. That just kind of made me do a 360 on my perspective shift. So thank you for that. You've been an amazing guest and a pleasure to have on the show.
Well, it was a lot of fun to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Cindy. And thank you to our listeners. Make sure to like, comment, share this interview to others that you know it will inspire. And we'll see you next week on another episode of the Franchise Woman Podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged.